Okay, welcome everyone. We are very fortunate to have Lynn Sumida with us and enlightening us today. She holds a master's degree in social work and has been working with people for over 40 years. She founded her own private practice firm in 1980 and has extensive experience dealing with trauma, abuse, loss, addictions, health, and relationship issues. Lynn has worked with the fields of education, health, mental health, social welfare, corrections, and the military. Lynn started her training in reality therapy in 1978, became an instructor in 1981, and a senior faculty in 1983. She assisted in the development of the training programs for practicum supervisor and basic instructor, and has supported countries in establishing their own teaching faculty.
Yeah.
Lynn is also a trainer in neuro-linguistic programming and the owner of Mirrors Point Facilitators Incorporated, a Vancouver-based company dedicated to helping individuals, companies, and organizations utilize their full human potential.
Thank you, Andrea. That's beautiful.
Sure, very well. I think you should be having a cape on.
Oh, yeah, I'm feeling very, very something.
Yes, after I read that, I feel like there should just be a big superhero cape floating behind you.
Well, I'm one of those people that was blessed to really know what I wanted to do in terms of working with people. And so the evolution of getting trained as a master's degree, learning and meeting Dr. Glasser made a huge difference. And so, today's presentation is really a retrospect look back on what I've learned. Because in the very early days, we learned about choice theory, and it was called control theory, which you will recognize, some of you, for those days. And then the switch from control theory to choice theory was really a strategic choice, I think, for Dr. Glasser to say he wanted to point to where people had choice in their life. Yes, we're an internal control system, and we're going to delve more deeply into that because it's really relevant to the topic today of how we look at and understand total behavior. So moving along, we had the original ideas and the training and so on. And then more information came out about the brain and how we operate and other factors like energy and resonance and consciousness. Oh, good. Victoria is able to join us. Oh, welcome, Victoria. I'm so glad you could make it. I've just barely started.
Okay.
So you received, I hope, the handout. I'm going to screen share it as well, but if you've got it, you can refer to that, because this document, first and foremost, is something I made up. So please don't look at it as truth, but look at it as some ideas that we're going to explore. And so let me just take a moment here, and I think I can screen share. No, you need to let me screen share, Andrea, please.
Okay, let me hear what I can do here. Okay, try now.
Thank you. There we go. And we've got a document right here. There we go. So I titled it The Evolution in Understanding Total Behavior. So what I'd like to do today is we're going to talk about each of the levels. We'll maybe do level 1 and 2 and then move into a little bit of conversation. What's resonating for you, what's familiar, different, and then look at level 3, which is what I'm calling the deep end of the swimming pool. So we get into some different ideas. So as we look at level 1, this comes from my sort of beginning understanding of the concept of total behavior. So here we've got that all 4 components of action, thinking, feeling, physiology, they all work together and they operate as an integrated whole, which I think most of us would be pretty comfortable with that idea. And that if you change one component, it's going to shift all the others. And that was brilliant for me, especially when I would have people coming from different disciplines, and maybe they were body workers, or maybe they had a lot of practice in terms of behavior modification. Back in the late 70s, that was popular. It was easy to say, well, if you change the action, it's going to change the thinking, the feeling, the physiology. We could just work beautifully with that. And of course, because we have the most control over actions and thinking, that's where we start in terms of interventions often, because it's the easiest place to work with people. And so choice is presented in a sense, we're focusing a lot more on actions and thoughts. What people are choosing to do, what are the thinking patterns, and so on, which is where we're going to expand as we go into level 2. The last piece I realized in that beginning time of my learning and growth was really the brain was kind of viewed just as a mechanism. Like we weren't going into brain science. In fact, the chart that Dr. Glasser developed that Wendell just held up a few minutes ago, sometimes called the blue chart, even though he labeled it the brain, he's really talking about how the mind works, because he's not going into, neurons and neural pathways and brain plasticity, none of that. So the focus there in that first level, I think, is really embracing self-responsibility. What can I take ownership for? What can I take charge of in terms of actions and thinking? Now, what's really interesting is if we look at the back wheels of the car as we speak, the feelings and the physiology. Most of us, I think, would present that in terms of the back wheels follow the front wheels. So based on how I'm thinking, I'm going to generate the feelings that go with thoughts and the physiology. And that's absolutely true in a basic kind of ABC way. Where it gets more interesting is what happens when neural pathways are already grooved. Okay, do actions and thoughts always lead? And that question started me thinking about what's really going on in the system. And so that takes us over into level 2. And I'll just scroll up there. So level 2, in my thinking, I started to realize, well, total behavior isn't just about behavior or the 4 components or how they work. Total behavior is an entire system. We are a total behavior system. Just let that sink in for you. We are a total behavior system. Everything is integrated. So now what's going on in the brain is really relevant, isn't it? And what's going on in the body is really relevant to the total behavior system. Well, that opens up all sorts of things, doesn't it? So as we think about neurology, once a neural pathway is grooved, it's like a superhighway. It can run very fast, very effortlessly. It doesn't take conscious thought to run that pattern. And so, as Andrea said in my bio, I started working a lot with trauma. And I'll never forget this woman who came in the very early days, because in the late 70s, a lot of people were coming forward with disclosures of abuse. And I was a young social worker with no training in trauma and healing per se. And so my belief was, well, if somebody's had a traumatic experience, if they are listened to and honored and respected, that should be kind of enough, don't you think? That should have done the healing. And of course, that was ridiculous. Certainly being heard and not told that you're making it up or just creating a problem or whatever. Yes, being heard and listened to is important, but it wasn't the magic pill for healing. And so how do you help people heal? So it was really like being thrown into the deep end of the swimming pool in terms of trauma. And this woman came in one day and she was very upset. And I said to her, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Oh my God, Lynn, it's the leaves." And I said, "What do you mean, the leaves?" She said, "Can't you smell the leaves? It's the smell of the leaves." And in the fall, the smell of many leaves on the ground is very distinctive. Well, for her, it was absolutely hardwired in to her experience of being pushed down into the leaves and sexually abused, assaulted. She was not thinking. She walked out the door with no thought of that past trauma. And all of a sudden she smelled that smell and the entire experience was back right there and running through her system. And so understanding that once neural pathways are grooved, it's like the back wheels of the car do run it. It's not just occasionally, they can absolutely run the system. So that opened up a lot of really interesting exploration and research and whatnot. What do we do when those neural pathways are grooved? What do we do if somebody has a pattern of obsessive compulsive behaviors and anytime they feel anxious, they need to do those behaviors that soothe the system? They're running loops without conscious thought. And so here it becomes really important how we approach that idea of choice. It's not quite like you can say to somebody, "You're choosing to think this or that," when that's already running. And another really amazing example that they're now looking into extensively is pornography. We have an epidemic of people that are addicted to pornography. And so there's been people studying what's happening in the brain, and the dopamine and the chemicals that are released with pornography. And the whole idea they now believe is that these are addictive loops. The person is running that addictive loop and they never stop wanting. So this takes us into a concept of a positive feedback loop. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but in other times we've talked about the whole idea of the internal control system is what Dr. Glasser called a negative feedback loop. What that really means, to my understanding, is when we get a match for what we want, if metaphorically we use a thermostat, for example, if I set it for 70 and the thermostat, the temperature gets to 70, what does the furnace or the air conditioning do? It goes into sleep mode, it stops, it gets a match. That's called a negative feedback loop, meaning when you get the match, you can stop. And the next thing you want goes on the scale and we start behaving again. We are a negative feedback loop. Well, here's the difference. Positive feedback loop, you get what you want and you want more. You get what you want more. You get a match and you keep going. And positive feedback loops are destructive. Many times they will end in death, in destruction, because there isn't an end point. So I'm not a specialist in pornography work and that type of addiction, but I've researched it because of clients coming in, and what they recommend is you need stopping. You need abstinence. You have to break the cycle because the system doesn't stop wanting. All right, let's go a little bit further down here. So as I pointed out, telling a person they have a choice if they're in that chemical loop is unhelpful and I think hurtful. Helping people understand what's happening in their brain is incredible. Now, I brought in this next point. We were speaking a little earlier before we started about Dr. Joe Dispenza. One of his books, he titled Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Now, what is he pointing to? Well, this is where this whole idea of how we form our identity, what happens when we have traumas and we build that into our identity? Well, it becomes part of who we think we are sometimes. So I came through the era of people just, feeling that the best way to introduce themselves was as a survivor. And there were all the survivor groups that started up where people could claim their experience, but notice how it's framed. I'm a survivor. I'm a this. That tells you they've locked it into their identity, the I am. Now, when we do that, then we start building identity around trauma or around addictions. I'm an alcoholic. There's power in doing that because it keeps it very focused, but there's a downside. So when Dr. Dispenza is saying we need to break the habit of being ourselves, what is he pointing to? What habit or pattern of thinking is he talking about? So this was a very interesting idea for me because we get attached, we form habits and links. So I want to talk just about how some of this patterning works, just using my NLP background, but I want to pop out of this screen share. We know patterns form by linking things, and that's very efficient in the brain. We want to link things, and it makes it easy. So if you think of walking, do you consciously think about how you walk each step? If you're able, most people don't think about it. But does anybody know someone or been a person who needed to relearn to walk? Yeah. How hard is it, Wendell?
Well, starting from baby steps.
Yes.
Yeah.
How much thinking needs to go in? Huge amount, isn't it? So here we have what we call organized behavior of walking, and we can do it unconsciously virtually. And yet when we lose that ability through surgery or an accident, and we have to relearn it, we really get in touch with all the thinking that goes in to building those patterns. When you watch a baby, oh my gosh, all the behavior to try and make that pattern of walking happen. And the system reorganizing right before your eyes, really, of creating and adapting and adjusting and trying and doing. So very interesting. But if I said to you, what things in your brain have you got linked? Can you think of anything that you would say X is linked with Y? Anything come to mind? Well, for some people, morning and coffee are absolutely linked. In the old days, like they will tell you, I can't think until I've had my coffee. Don't ask me a question until I've had my coffee. In the old days, smokers would say, coffee and cigarettes, they're a package deal. When I walk into a movie theater, I have popcorn linked with movies. I could have had a 3-course meal and I walk in and my brain goes, popcorn. It has nothing to do with hunger, everything to do with what I've hooked together in my brain. So it's powerful for us to just feel how simple and ordinary. But if you work with people, say couples who have conflict, and if one of the places they fight is the bedroom will get anchored as a place of conflict. That's not a good thing. And some of you will know that adage, never go to bed mad. There's a lot of wisdom to that, because what it's saying is don't take that into the bedroom and into the next day. Any comments, questions on that? How's that sitting for you?
Yep.
Seems pretty clear. So now let's go to breaking the habit of being yourself. I think he's talking about the patterns of thinking about ourselves. What habitual thoughts do you have about yourself that would be good to break? Yeah, anything coming to mind? Because we all have them. People will say, I'm not good with mechanics or technology. That's a habit, a pattern of thinking. They've said many times often. It's a way of thinking about themselves. Is it serving? Is it helpful? Anybody else think of a habitual thought that doesn't really help you? Anything come to mind?
And I go to, am I still?
Sure, go ahead, Aunt Wendell.
Yeah, let's go. Okay. When I go to seminars and workshops, okay, we're taking a break. And I head straight for the soft drink machine.
Yes.
It's a break. Get a drink.
Yes.
I'm not thirsty. Just they're
Exactly. So you're running a pattern, a way of thinking. You've linked breaks with a certain kind of beverage. Yeah, exactly. And people will feel very deprived sometimes if all they get is water at a break. And yet the body, that's the one beverage the body wants. Yeah. Susan, any pattern comes to mind for you?
I've linked tiredness and boredom with food.
Yes, exactly. And do you have some beliefs about yourself in relation to food?
I should be able to control it, but I know that if I have the food and I'm tired, I'm going to have more energy, even though it doesn't give it to me, but it's my belief about food.
That's right. Exactly. It's your belief about food and your belief about yourself, which has some flavor of, I'm not good at managing my food or regulating myself. Yeah. Vicki, do you have one?
Lynn,
Yeah.
as soon as she said food, I don't know why this connection happened, but I go to Texas Roadhouse for a ribeye and mashed potatoes. I don't care what else is at Texas Roadhouse. It's all the time.
That's right. So we begin to see how habitual our behaviors are, our patterns, whether it's what we eat, how we eat, when we eat, et cetera, all of those are running to a great extent without conscious focus. We're not paying attention. And yet we're running our lives without realizing, therefore, how we're creating our life, creating reality. So this is a much deeper understanding, isn't it, of quality world than what we probably learned in the beginning, or maybe even how we've taught it. The whole belief system. And I will say to people sometimes, are you in your own quality world? And people will think, well, yeah, I'm a mom, I'm a teacher, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm married. They have themselves in their quality world based on roles, capabilities, skills, job, profession, responsibilities, even physical, if they're a runner or an athlete or this or that. But what happens if those things get taken away? Who are you if you're no longer a mother or married? Who are you if your body changes and you lose a limb or a breast? You begin to see the power of identity when it's attached to externals. There's a real vulnerability because those can all be lost. And those are really powerful moments for people of what is really true for you at the deepest core level of who you are. So my colleague, Jeff Brown, lost his son a year ago, 21-year-old son, to an accidental drug overdose. He had no intentions of dying. And that happened in June. And in December, Jeff and I were reviewing the year. And he said to me, without a word of a lie, this was the most amazing year I can remember. And in the midst, he lost his 21-year-old son. Was that denial? No. He went through excruciating pain to the other side of amazing joy and allowed himself to grow and evolve through that experience. So it really points to what we actually can do with ourselves and what we can do with healing, whether it's emotional healing or physical healing. So there we go. So as we look at level 2, what I've said is the goal, I think, of when we really look at how we function is to move beyond surviving to thriving. You don't need to be a trauma survivor for that issue. Are we thriving in our life? Is the real question. So now I'm not seeing Andrea. I'm not sure what's happened to her. So what I'm going to suggest is that we will maybe stay, because I don't think I can do breakout rooms. Well, I could. Here's the question. We're a very small group. Do you want to go into a breakout room and chat in pairs or stay together?
We'll stay together.
Stay together. Okay, no breakout rooms for you guys. We're all in the deep end of the pool.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So let's open it up for comments. How are you feeling? Because level 1 was like the basics. Level 2, I'm saying, kind of stretched us. Okay, new information on the brain, new information on how we're a total behavior system, not just the 4 wheels of the car. More information on patterns and how things can run. How are you doing before we go to the deep end of the pool, which is level 3? Wendell.
Then with people as competent as all of these folks here are, all of us, and we go to conferences and their presentations, sometimes, you know, people know so much, got a good handle, that they don't have breakthrough moments here. Well, let me just say quickly before the end of this program, in which I would too, you've already bumped me up, and I'm thinking differently, additionally to this. And I just finished a 4-day cert week virtually, and I think I'm going to call them back up and say, hey, let's do another 30 minutes, because I'm going to do Sumida level 1, 2, and 3, because it's helping me, you know, too. And so I just want to tell you that to start, and this all makes sense. Just a quick thing, I won't belabor it, but remember back in the 70s, transactional analysis, I'm okay, you're okay, you're okay. That's
Yes.
a nice quadrant.
Yeah.
4 things. 1 block, I'm okay, you're okay. That's the ideal.
Right.
Another block, I'm okay, you're not.
Yep.
Block, you're okay, I'm not. Another block, none of us are okay. I mean, really, that's right. But when you ask about, am I in my own quality world? Am I in there? I'm okay. And of course, the ideal is I'm okay, you're okay. So it got me thinking about that too. I use that a lot too. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendell, for the feedback. And I really believe this understanding of ourselves is an evolving concept. I remember when I had a husband and a house and a private practice and a car in the garage and money to spend. Life was great. But then things changed. And then what happens to your identity? What if you don't have the car or the husband or this or that? And it really got me looking at identity. Is my self-esteem based on all those things? And what happens if I lose those? Is there a deeper identity I could rest on? Is there a deeper, solid foundation I could have under me so that regardless of loss, I could know my value and worth innately? So that's kind of where we're pointing to. Susan, Victoria, Anna, any comments you want on this first two levels?
I'm really enjoying listening to, because it is new information, but it's not in a sense, because I know that when I'm doing my training, I do focus a lot on your belief systems in the quality world and the person I want to be, so that when any event happens in your life, how do you say who's the person I want to be in this situation? So this sort of value adds to some of the ways I'm moving and the way I work with people.
That's beautiful, Susan, because that's taking it deeper, isn't it, than just what are you thinking? The 4 components, those were the building blocks, but now we're going into whole belief systems. And then belief systems about who you want to be and how you want to show up and what you value.
So this is Vicki. For me, I was interested in this because I'm wanting to teach basic trainings. And Wendell, it was in the middle of the week, last week, I had an aha moment that I forgot to get back with you and to audit your training to learn from you. So I had a horrible moment where I went, oh no, I forgot Wendell. So next training you have, Wendell, please send me a note and let me know. I have to teach 5 basic weeks in order to get my faculty status. So I know. So I am opening myself up to working with people all over, and I want to learn from people. So that's why I was interested in this, Lynn. When I saw it, I clicked on the link because, total behavior is one of the biggest components of a basic week. And then the advanced training week, over the weekend, I got to work with Dr. Bob and John Bicknell, I can't think of his last name. Anyway, Brickell from London.
Yes.
And I was with the basic for a little while, but then I did some advanced training, and I actually talked a little bit about the total behavior. And that's why when I saw it, I want to learn more so I can give a maybe better is not the right word.
Yeah.
Deeper.
That's
deeper
right.
Understanding, because I understand it and I can teach it. If I learn from you or Wendell or anyone else that I'm listening to, I'm just getting a deeper understanding of it, and I want to pass that information on. The last thing I want to have happen is Glasser's work to go away.
Right.
I just cannot fathom that happening. So I'm really focusing on this. I know, Wendell, look at you. I do have a class that I have to go teach. This has been very interesting because breaking it down by the levels, if you don't mind me using this handout, I think this is beautiful.
Vicki, can you hear me?
Yes.
Vicki, yeah. Ask Lynn if she might share her PowerPoint or her. I haven't found the handout yet. Maybe it's there somewhere.
Yes,
but that's
it is,
a
Wendell.
wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in an email, Wendell. I think with the link to the Zoom. If you go back to the link to the Zoom, that's where I found it. And
I gotta go look for it.
And Vicki, yes, you can absolutely use it. and use it with that awareness that this is just some thoughts in time. As we know more, we will grow more and we will add more pieces. So it's not something written in stone, but the goal of the training committee from WGI was to have these kinds of sessions where we can learn and grow together, where we can create safe spaces. Yeah, and you will be able to access the recording for the rest of today.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So
But-
Lynn, do you believe that this, that you're teaching on is part of reality therapy?
Well, reality therapy is the application of theory. And
Right.
so it's like gravity is a theory, and how you use gravity gets into application. So if you're a high jumper, you know speed makes a difference to how high you can jump, and how you jump, whether it's face forward or back, Fosbury flop, all that's application. So to me, reality therapy is how we take our understanding, the theory, into working with it. But there's...
So well, the reason I was asking is we're starting a reality therapy corner for counselors and educators that are interested. And something like this, it's just going to be an hour of teaching. I mean, we're just teaching
Yes.
from different people their thoughts. And I'm thinking this would go perfectly into that curriculum or that programming. So you might be approached.
The thing I want to say about these ideas, there's a great recording. Boba, who's the co-author of the book Reality Therapy, let me just get it for you. Yeah, Reality Therapy, Theory and Practice. Leon and Boba Lojak, wrote this, and they've done a beautiful job of really articulating how we're a total behavior system, not just the four wheels of the car. We're a completely integrated system. And when you start to deeply delve into internal control, it takes you into a very, very deep realization of, if you really understand internal control, then you understand you are choosing everything you perceive. Now, people find that very difficult to believe, that I'm choosing my perceptions. But the truth
Can I see
is,
that book again?
sure. The truth is there's millions of perceptions out there that your eyes could focus on. We focus on what is meaningful to us, that we want, and we focus on what we don't want in order to not get more of it. All of our perceptions are chosen perceptions. Now, that is a profound thought that cannot be lightly tossed to someone and expect them to really understand it.
Lynn, remember William Powers' book was Behavior that Controls.
Exactly.
And then Bill Glasser, his first book, was that. And then there are a number of people who love the technical aspect of it. There's one in particular I can think of. And his favorite book is Stations of the Mind. That's
Exactly.
Bill's first book on there. And then Bill later said, do not bother reading Stations of the Mind. He probably said, unless you've just got all the rest and you want to add this underneath it, But what Powers was saying is that our behavior is we're controlling to get the perception that we want. And that was an interesting thing. One quick thing, I've often thought how interesting it would be to get a group of they don't have to be young, but not super trained people in the area of human relations, counseling, human services, what have you. They're going in that direction. So you do a workshop and do a good job of teaching choice theory. And you say, okay, I'll be back next month. I can't go into reality therapy right now, but I'll be back next month or 2 months from now. And when I get back, you tell me how you figured out how to use this. Well, the thing is, the choice theory, if I've really learned it well, you say to somebody, well, now that you know choice theory, what would you want to talk to a client about? Well, duh, I'm going to ask them about their wants. I want to ask them about their behaviors. People can figure it out. And so it's, it's the core, counseling. Bye, Vicki. But
Wendell, and it's kind of a paradox because we can understand it, but how deeply do we live it? So many people are pretty clear on the idea that other people don't make them mad. We've kind of got that, and it's not the external world. But how many of us say our grandkids are making us happy?
Yeah.
Is really doing it for me. We are happy to say they are making us happy, fulfilled, joyful. We haven't flipped it fully, have we? We're not saying that it's actually a choice to be enjoying your grandchildren, to be getting joy from them. So there's all these little places where you see the subtle ways the old way of thinking is often still in our system. Well, let's go to level 3 and a little bit.
It occurs to me that you're talking about going deeper and deeper and deeper. I remember one of the self-hypnosis, relaxation, meditative tapes, and this man with this wonderful voice, you're going deeper and deeper and deeper. He had a nice baritone voice, and deeper. So your levels, see, first of all, you take a level. Here's 1, 2, 3. Okay, your levels are really here. We're sub-levels. They're levels going down rather than levels going up.
Yep, exactly. So you can take it in whichever direction you like. But now in level 3, what I realized is things were starting to change kind of 180 degrees. In other words, that in level 3, I was learning things that changed the rules of the game. So, for example, how many of you would say you used to believe, I'll believe it when I can see it? Does anybody remember that way of thinking? Yeah, I need to see it to believe it. Proof, right? What do we know today? Hannah?
I believe it, therefore I shall see it. Yes.
Exactly.
Oh.
We flipped it 180. When I believe it, I will see it. When I look for love, I'll see it. When I look for generosity, I'll see it. When I believe there's ships out there, my eyes can see them. So that's a 180-degree shift, isn't it? A very simple one. When I was in grad school, I worked in a stroke ward. We knew the patients couldn't get better. They'd had a stroke. They were never going to recover their movement. We just helped them cope. What do we know about the brain today after it's had a stroke? Remarkable things can happen in the brain plasticity. So if you're interested in that, I love to mention Dr. Norman Doidge. I've referenced it on the handout. So his research into pioneering scientists that were looking at brain plasticity is amazing. And off of the book, there's a YouTube 30-minute video you can watch that Dr. David Suzuki did, featuring these scientists and all the different applications of brain plasticity. It is astonishing what the brain will do. But they found one factor that made all the difference. The brain has to feel that it can't do the old pathways. So let's take stroke victims. They would today strap down the good arm. Well, I would never have done that to a patient. I mean, they're already got a bad side that they can't move, is paralyzed, and now I'm strapping down the good arm. Why? What it did is push the brain into reorganizing, into creativity, and the brain responds. Now in 6 weeks, it's unbelievable what they can do. But that way of thinking is 180 degrees opposite to what I was trained with. So we're starting to see and learn different rules of the game. How about this one? Pain is actually located in the brain, not the body. There's an incredible story of a woman, 10 years of chronic pain, severe, on disability. She learns to use her brain and visualize her brain calm down, not in excruciating pain. And she reduced the pain map in her brain to the point of being, after 10 years, completely off morphine, completely pain-free, and able to move through using her mind. We're into a way bigger field, aren't we now? It's not just the simple ABCs of thoughts, feelings, physiology. It's built on that, but it's going far deeper. So now, as we move into this area, so choice is understood as a key component in the process of rewiring the brain. We really, as Susan was saying, when you ask somebody who's the person you want to be, or how do you want to handle this, you're really inviting them to step into choosing to do many things, including rewire the brain. Because based on what you think, the brain will change, the brain will grow. But now let's add another element, consciousness. Where do you put consciousness? Some of you will have read Power versus Force, Dr. Hawkins, and the measurement of emotions and worldview and the resonance, the energetic resonance. So he's done muscle testing on emotions like love and joy and emotions like anger, hurt, shame. Where do we place that in our understanding of all of this is one of the big questions. Because today you could have somebody coming to a basic week who might ask you that question. How does consciousness fit into this whole theory of human behavior that Dr. Glasser has offered us? So I want to open this up for a little bit of conversation, and the whole idea that our consciousness is now guiding how we live our lives, how we create versus matter. This is a very different understanding that from what most of us have been raised with. So, and lastly on there, I put identity then continues to evolve, led by an inner essence, spirit, whatever you like, connected to that which is greater. We're starting to realize there's more than just the three that we probably most of us knew: have, do, and be. Many of us started off getting the have, all the things we have, then we get on into the doing. But now we're in an era where people are addressing the being. And that's a bigger piece than just the component of an action or a thought. So let's go to some sharing around these ideas. What? Yes, Wendell.
Anna, you were going to
I was
talk.
gonna- Yeah, Anna,
You were
you
going to say.
breath, I love it when I know how good you are at taking a breath and coming into ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. And coming into our heart and awakening the wisdom of our heart.
Right.
And I so appreciate this today, Lynn. You have just taken what we were all taught as the basics and you've woven together what so many of us have been studying and learning over the last few years, you know, last probably 15, 20 years. And yet it's not a this or that, it's a weaving, and you have taken us to a depth that I as an integrative health and wellness practitioner, I'm so grateful for this, Lynn. You really have just taken it to a much deeper level.
Because
So
Anna, and I want you to speak because I know you know this, like the resonance of the heart. What
Yes.
are we discovering? You see, we're over, I guess, in physiology because it's body, but what are we discovering about that?
Right. And so what we know is that the heart actually has a brain. And it's like, what? A brain in your heart? Yes. They have discovered that there are over 40,000 neurons in your heart that mimic your cranial brain. And there is a conversation going on continuously between your heart and your brain. And that can either be a very incoherent, jagged conversation that's really kind of stuck in those non-heart qualities, if you will,
Or head and
anger,
heart fighting.
judgment. Yes, yes. And so, and then there is the possibility of a coherent conversation that's going on, right? And what's happening with the energy coming out just from the four of us, there is a coherence that is happening because we are like, oh, we are appreciating, we are celebrating, we're grateful, we're in a state of gratitude, which all of those states of being that we know through the power of force, power versus force, really activates within us. So there's a connection going on right now. There's a respect. It's a, Lynn, you have the ability, you really do have the ability to bring people in. There's not a, anything that's like, but there is a respect and also just an activation for more learning, and you model that. And I'm just so, and the reason I place my hand on my heart is that when you place your hand on your heart, what you're doing is activating calming centers in your brain. So that is a behavior right here, right? So placing your hand on your heart. And then if you breathe in gently for 5 seconds on the in count and 5 seconds out, in and out, what you're doing is you're putting yourself in a safe place, meeting a need for being safe and secure. Because if there was a tiger chasing you, you would not have your hand on your heart, breathing in quietly in and out, right? So what you're doing is you're activating calming centers in your brain. And I just got off the phone with a client. I do a lot of surgical healing coaching right now, working with people going into surgery and after they come out. And when we can be in a state of healing before we even go in for the surgery, and that healing activates when we're calm. It doesn't activate when we've got fear and anger and stress and all of that, and worry. Worry is one of the worst for us. So, but when we can be in that state of calm, and there's actions we can take.
Yes.
you know, to get there. And the whole understanding of the whole neurobiology, I'm over the top thrilled with. So I put my hand on my heart in just deep gratitude for you, Lynn, and for the opportunity that we have today to cover this, you know.
Thank you. And this is that, but that was such a beautiful example of a deeper, richer understanding of working with the physiology, with the neurology through an action, incorporating energy and resonance and what it does. Like it's a very big rippling out, isn't it? And it's not the ABCs. We need those first ABCs, the basics. We need to get those pieces in place before we open it up, you know, too much. But we can start to include little bits and pieces of this. And I think it really keeps it exciting and expanding for the learner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Susan, anything you'd like to share? Or sorry, I'll come back to Wendell in a minute.
Susan.
I'm just thoroughly enjoying this. I've got a group of counsellors I'm doing advanced practicing with, and I'm going to take this material straight back to them, because we had a discussion about this the other day, and I thought, I actually said to them, I need to be talking to Lynn. So yeah, this is so valuable and so rich. Thank you very much.
And, you know, Dr. Glasser was such a pioneer in terms of really understanding all behavior is purposeful.
Right.
When he stepped into the field of addictions and stepped into health and got huge criticism about, are you saying I'm choosing to get sick, or I'm choosing to be an alcoholic, or that it's a choice? And you see, this is where we have to differentiate between what is consciously top of mind I'm choosing and what patterns am I doing to manage, to cope. Each and every one of those patterns is leading somewhere. It's leading towards dis-ease in the body or ease. And so which way are we pointing? Are we able to comfort our body? We know as well the stomach has all kinds of neural cells. So now when people say, I have a gut feeling about something, that's not just something to be laughed at and poked fun at. Oh yeah, right, you've always got gut feelings. No, actually, there's a brain. There's intelligence there that's communicating from the gut to the heart to the prefrontals and so on. Mm-hmm. So we keep adding layers of information that we need time to kind of talk and absorb, and how does this fit and how does that fit? Wendell, back to you. You were going to make a point.
Well, you see, every time one of you opens your mouth, I think of 2 or 3 other things. And so now instead of having one, I've got 3 or 4. Is it the Boy Scouts? What is it? Head, heart, mind, and soul? Who remembers? You know, in other words, there's several things that they say were.
Yes, that's right.
Anyway, and all this makes me think of that. Well, Barnes Buffy's book, Reinventing Yourself.
Yes.
Yes, and in the book, he takes. There may be a lot of other metaphors, but he takes the. I just got into the business with a friend of flipping houses, and we had a little condo that we bought, and it is now for sale, and we're going to make a few bucks. Anyway, and so does the house need dressing up, a paint job, a few replacement of fixtures here, just a lighthearted kind of a reinventing, you know, are we taking, there are people that say, oh, this kitchen, the people that bought our home, we recently moved from a house to a smaller condo, and know that somebody went in there and said, oh, this kitchen is going to have to come out.
Yeah.
It's going to have to come out. Well, we lived with it for 22 years. It didn't have to come out. It was in their mind and protected. But Anyway, does that, is there a significant overhaul, or are we tearing down everything and starting from the foundation and going back up? And you're hitting on all those areas from kind of
I am, because what I really think we're talking about these days is most of us have done a model of life that had, you know, achieving, succeeding, accumulating, getting, etc. It was all the ways that we learned how to be good people, to be successful people, etc., etc. I think the invitation for the human race is, can we evolve beyond what we learned in those early years of programming? And so if we don't form new pictures of our own evolution, if we don't form new pictures of humanity and our relationship with the planet, it's not going to go well. But we have such incredible information, starting with choice theory and the applications of reality therapy and lead management and so on. The difference we can make for people, as we all know, is tremendous. And we have a responsibility, I think, to keep growing with these ideas. Imagine if Dr. Glasser was alive today and we could talk about all these ideas from neuroscience, et cetera, because in his heyday, he was enormously creative. He just was taking ideas and turning them inside out and constantly evolving. I mean, there was a time every conference I went to, something new was coming out. It was like, oh my Lord. Like, how do we yeah.
I got to learn choice theory now. I just got good at reality therapy.
Yeah, I used to annoy myself with that, and now who I am today.
And now
That's creativity. Now I embrace it. It's like, yeah, we thought that way, but you know, now we have new information, and it's so really see it as creativity. So yeah.
Right. And now if you think about the quantum field,
Yeah.
and whether you believe or know anything about it, the very little bit that I know is a wave turns into a particle when there's focus. Now, that's a profound idea. Waves shift into particles and then matter forms and it's with the focus. So it's really pointing to the incredible role what we focus on matters. That means how we think, what we believe matters. All of it interweaves in how we are actually creating our reality day by day and our health or our lack of health. If we're wanting to recover, that focus is an incredible force, but it's more than one thought.
Yes.
Because if it was just one thought, we'd all be millionaires. You see, it's about the totality of being. It's the resonance. It's the really stepping in and feeling viscerally in the body what you want to be embodying. So we really need to go into that fuller sense, because just sort of lying on my bed, feeling very hard done by and wishing for $1 million isn't going to do it. That's just like splitting off one element, and it doesn't work that way. So that's what to me is very exciting, is how we do weave these things together into a more cohesive understanding, and how we open to the rules of the game are changing. So I'm going to leave you with one last story. I went to see a woman named Byron Katie, which many of you will know. Love, love, love her. And her book, Loving What Is, was a profound book for me many, many, many years ago. And so I was at a 3-day seminar with her, and she said at one point, when you are fully present, there are no more decisions to make. And I thought, that's ridiculous. Like, how could that be possible? I mean, I make hundreds of decisions every day. What is she talking about? But like great ideas, it went in and it got into my brain and it just sort of stayed there. And now and again, I'd come around and think about it. And I go, no, I don't get that. No. And another 6 months would go by. And then one day, I remembered a very important principle of NLP. You must try something on before you discard it. Give yourself the experience before you write it off. So here I was declaring that her idea was impossible, and I had no idea. I didn't know what it even meant. So I decided this one day, I'm going to try it out. What if it's true? When you're fully present, there are no more decisions to make. So I woke up in the morning, my little feet hit the floor, and I went, oh, it's the day. No more decisions. So I sat there and my mind went crazy. What are you going to do? Are you going to the bathroom? Are you going to get water? Where are you going? What are you going to do? And I'm like, shh, I'm not deciding. I'm sitting here. So I'm sitting and more thinking starts up. No. And I'm like, I am not making, I'm going to sit here as long as it takes. I am not making a decision. And so I calmed down finally, I guess. I'm sitting there and all of a sudden I had stood and I went, oh, well, I wonder which way I'm going. Kitchen's this way, bathroom's that way. I calm down, just breathe, just be. And then I was leaning towards the kitchen. So I moved towards the kitchen and got some water. And I went, this is very interesting. And then I noticed, moved towards the bathroom. And I was following something that I couldn't even name. And then a little idea popped in. There's a fellow, Doug Dirksen, I'll never forget him. He was having back surgery. He was going to be flat on his back for 6 weeks. And he had written to me asking for a set of cassette tapes that I told him about. And I promised to copy them. This is how old the story is. I would copy those tapes and send them to him so he could listen. And I remembered Doug Dirksen, and I hadn't sent the tapes. I get the tapes. I'm copying the tapes. I'm doing the labels. And my mind is like, are you kidding? Because the part I didn't tell you was I was leaving for Bogota, Colombia the next day. I had a list a mile high to get ready. I had to get brand new American money from the bank because they don't like money that's ripped or torn. And I'm leaving. And this is the day I've decided no decisions. And I'm copying tapes. And then I'm down at the drugstore mailing them. What I want to tell you is I floated through that day. Everything on the list got done, and I never looked at the list. And by that evening, my bag was packed. And I had had the most amazing day, completely stress-free. And I finally understood what she meant. Because when you're present, your incredible, wise, whole integrated system knows what's the next right step and the next right step. It was way smarter than my conscious mind that remembers 7 plus or minus things, right? That mind that worries and makes lists and so on because it can't keep track, it's very limited. The wisdom of your greater mind, your entire system, is so superior. I never would have remembered Doug Dirksen and those tapes if I'd been following my list. And even if I'd miraculously remembered, I would have convinced myself I didn't have time. So that taught me a profound truth, which was radically different than how I was raised. You need to plan. You have to make a list. You have to be organized. You have to be on top. You have to track. And by the way, this is how time works. We were taught all of that. But there is another way to do life. There truly is. And it's not something that comes naturally. It's something you have to want to discover for yourself. But truly, the whole thing is opening up, the whole understanding of how we can manifest, how we can live, how we can heal. These are all frontiers, in my opinion. And we're just at the very beginning of this whole exciting journey. So I want to leave you with a person that I truly just love to bits. And this is an author. His name is Charles Eisenstein. And he's written a book. And I would buy this book just based on the title. And the title is, Let's Create the More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know is Possible. He has dedicated his life to creating the world, the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. So you see the incorporation of the heart wisdom and what kind of world do we need to create that? So that's my offering for all of you. Thank you so much for showing up. I've loved being with you. It's been beautiful having a small group. I think in some ways that makes it so much more interesting, or we can go into more depth than the big group. So I think people will really enjoy this recording. Any last words from you guys? Maybe we've got just a few minutes if you want to share anything that stood out for you. What really caught your attention? Wendell.
This is not my strong suit, but I know and believe in the principle in the 12-step programs especially. They say to people, let go and let go.
Yes.
And that sounded significantly alike what you and Ira, what you were getting from Ira, from the seminar, there too. It's an interesting thing, And what do we got to do? Just try and let go. I mean, you still got to take care of things that are absolutely necessary, but the mindset, right here, just let that clear up,
That's right.
So that was interesting, that connection.
As you clear more and more, you will create more spaciousness inside for yourself. And it's astonishing how much can get done or created.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything stand out for you, Anna or Susan?
I really appreciate, Anna, the contribution you made to add to the things that Lynn talked about, and when you shared that the work that you do, I found that really, really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and thank you, Susan, and also this whole experience, just even the four of us being together, and my heart is just so filled with gratitude for this. But Lynn, when you shared about to be calm and just breathe from Byron Katie's, and it is that state of calmness when we can go from chaos and confusion into clarity and calm. Our whole system quiets down and then the creativity awakens, you know, and that we don't have to go into efforting in those decisions because there's a flow then. And like Wendell said, you know, it's the letting go in order for the flow to happen. But we've all spent, certainly I have spent so much of my life efforting, you know, figuring it out. There's this part of me that goes, no, list. And yet the seductiveness of that calm, that when you can get there, there are no decisions because it just flows out from you. So this is just brilliant. I'm looking forward to us being back together again soon. You
Me
know?
too.
Whoa.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Great.
And the other point that you were pointing to, and I want to just capture, is what it showed me is I was not used to trusting myself in this mode of surrender, in this mode of letting go. My mind was predicting, you'll forget something, it won't happen, there's not enough time, etc. This deep trust in ourselves is so important. Yeah, and it is not something you can get without discovering it. So it's a catch-22. I have to take the step without knowing for sure how it's going to go in order to discover I can trust my innate system. And so it's a bit of a paradox, I guess that's what you call it, that is required. And so, you know, that's why it took me 2 years to be ready to try out that idea from Byron Katie. It literally did. I just couldn't imagine it. But I didn't understand what she meant by presence and that the next right thing would emerge. I had no clarity on that, nor trust in it.
Or experience.
Or experience with it, exactly. And so once I did, it was like, wow, this is pretty nifty.
Yeah. I love it. Oh, goodness. That's
All right. Well, thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
I've done a trust fall.
Yes.
Have all of you done a trust
right.
fall?
Yeah.
Well, of course, we did it with people that we trusted.
Yeah.
All right. The environment, the setting, but especially there was this thing about trusting ourselves and our accurate kind of assessment that this was a safe environment, you know, and that sort of thing. And what you're talking about there, this is kind of a trust, emotional, psychological, spiritual, but trustful. It doesn't entail the possibility of hitting the floor on your back of your head, but what will happen, you know, I'm going no further than the floor.
Yeah, and people, that's a very important step often, to trust others, to trust the context, and to give yourself that experience. Without that, it's going to be hard to go further and trust within. When there isn't anyone else, you're trusting within. That's another level of trusting.
But I really appreciate that, the analogy of the trust fall. It just gives me a physical, it's like, oh, can I trust, you know, can I fall into this way of presence, you know? And so that was helpful. Thanks, Wendell. That was good.
All right. It's wonderful. Well, thank you one and all. I'm going to stop the recording.
I'm going to trust.